This is Sky Moore. This segment is on the pros and cons of public offerings, if you ever reach that point in your life where you have the choice. Here's the benefits of a public offering. One is the public totally overvalues the value of equity. You will see every time you see an IPO that goes out for unbelievable prices compared to what it would go out in a private offering. So you get vastly more money for a given percentage interest in the entity in a public offering. Second is name recognition, and it's kind of the ability to pound your chest and say, I'm a public company, and people love to do that. It gives them a certain panache, and more than that, it also gives market credibility. It gives you access to the capital markets. It makes it easier to raise more capital. And somewhat bizarrely, it makes it much more easier to borrow money from lenders because they tend to value the entity based on whatever the equity is trading at. So I've often seen where equity is trading at crazy multiples and banks will implicitly accept that that's the value of the company and will loan massive amounts of money to it, often to their chagrin when things don't turn out to be as rosy as the public thought they would be. But it does make it much more easier to get access to the capital markets. It also gives liquidity to the shareholders. They can now sell their interest in the public market. Typically, though, not management. Often management is subject to restrictions on transfer that are imposed both by the securities laws and by the investment bankers that do the IPO. So management doesn't get the liquidity often that they expect, or there's often restrictions on what they can do. The downside of a public offering are fairly substantial and need to be considered. One is just horrific transaction costs. They're extraordinarily expensive. It can cost at least $1 million to do an IPO. You can't really do it for less than, these days, about $50 million because of the cost of doing an IPO, so you can't go out for really less than that. And you immediately expose yourself to full disclosure of all your confidential information almost, because you have to put it in the public record in SEC filings, which exposes you to shareholder lawsuits, so that you can almost guarantee that every time a company has an IPO that's public, within the next year they get sued, because the moment the stock drops a few pennies, some shareholder will do a class action suit. A significant detriment is the management's focus on the impact to the shareholders. And in particular, analysts look at several factors in valuing stock. They look to increases in gross revenue, whether or not there's an increase in net revenue, and they look to the debt-equity ratio, and they look to gross assets. And so management will often focus on those three aspects of their business, even if they're not generating net profits. And I have seen management spend months worrying about an impact of a transaction on increase in gross revenue, even if it'll have no impact on net revenue. And so one of the significant detriments of a public company is the impact that it has on management's thinking. And often you'll find that non-publicly traded companies are more nimble and more focused on making profits than they are on accounting gimmicks and how a transaction will be reported for accounting purposes. So there's the pros and cons of being a public company. This is Sky Moore signing off on this segment. Hope you join me for the next one.